been sick all week a little bit. My back's been giving me some problems, so if I kind of like stop and like twitch, don't worry, it's normal. Don't worry about it. So, real quick, I want to thank you to Marissa. I totally dropped the ball about bringing snacks this morning, and she was superwoman and went and grabbed some. So I know she's listening, so thank you. And Dave, thank you for not killing me yet. Okay, so I'm going to pray real quick and then we'll start. Father, thank you for this opportunity to be open with these people about my testimony, and I thank you for us all being able to come here today, and just may you bless the rest of the day as we drive around and keep us safe. Amen. So I'm going to give you guys my testimony today, kind of so you can better know who I am as I'm spending time with your kids who they have blessed me more than I feel like I've blessed them as I've talked to them and got to know them. So I was born on the East Coast in Hartford, Connecticut, to a single mom. She had me when she was 18 years old, and she thankfully kept me and did not put me up for adoption. And my grandparents kind of came in and were huge influences in my life, took me as almost a child of their own, just with the amount of money and time they spent on me. And my mom was in school at the time, so she dropped out of school for a year and then went back and finished while she had a 1-year-old son. Her roommates would kind of watch me while she had a class, and then she would come back, and then she would work. And I don't recall how it completely worked being a young child, but I know that she did it, and she ended up graduating in 5 years, which to me was, even now, is phenomenal, and she's a hero of mine. So my biological father, within this case, he was around, but he was kind of going through his own sort of quarter-life crisis being a young man. He didn't really know what to do, didn't plan on being a father, so he just kind of took off and actually moved to California for a short time and sort of did his own thing. And so he wasn't really around for me growing up. And when I did see him, it did not hit me that he was my father. He, to me, was Jay. That was his name, that's Jay. It wasn't my dad to me. I never called him dad. And it didn't hit me until sometime later that he was my dad. And that came along when my stepfather came in. I was about 4 or 5. My mom started dating this young guy, and I fell in love with him. And he treated me phenomenally. He loved me. He would take care of me. He would babysit me. Watch me while my mom was out working as he was going through his master's program. And he asked my mom to marry him, and they got married, and that became my dad. And I remember when they came home and told me that they were engaged. My mom's like, "So you have a dad now?" And I just was blown away. I was so excited. I tackled him, and it was this phenomenal moment that I remember as a little 5-year-old, and more impressed that I knocked this grown man down. But and we started this family, and it didn't hit me one day that. So then one day he says, "Hey, would you like my last name?" And I was like, "Well, yeah." Like, I mean, it doesn't make I was in 1st grade. The question seemed simple enough to me, so I took the last name. And then later that year is when I would see Jay about once a year, give or take, and we're spending time together, and I always would have a lot of anxiety about it because he would say he'd be coming on time, and then I wouldn't see him until like 3 hours later, and I just, as a kid, I was very, very anxious and very sensitive to everything, so I just was super paranoid, and so then we'd hang out, and so he looks at me one day, he goes, "You know what, why don't you ever call me Dad?" And in that moment, I remember thinking, wait, like, oh, you're technically my dad, and the one I've been calling Dad technically isn't by blood, and it just threw me off into. I just didn't really know how to feel. Remember, I came home. My parents could tell something was wrong, but what's wrong? You're okay. And I kind of was, "Oh no, yeah, I'm fine." Went to my room, and 1st grade at this point, and they're like, "Well, no, like what's wrong? We can tell you're lying." My mom used to always say this Italian saying, you can pull the wool over my eyes, but you can't pull the wool over God's eyes, which used to put me in fear for always. So she'd say that to me. And so she said it to me, and I'm like, "Okay, well," I was like, "Well, you're not my dad." And I broke down crying. And he's like, No. Like, listen, a dad just isn't someone who's by blood. It's someone who loves you and takes care for you, and it doesn't have to be blood, but who takes that role in your life. And I was like, okay, like that made sense to me. So anyway, I grew up in Massachusetts most of my life. I was born in Connecticut, but I grew up in Boston and the surrounding area for years and years, and we went through a small, my mother was raised Catholic, being Italian, and my dad was a Christian, but when he had gone to university, he hadn't walked away from the faith, but he had just kind of stopped moving forward with it, I'd say. So they got married, And my mom was like, hey, I really want something more out of church. The Catholic Church put a bad taste in her mouth just the way, she was raised and with a lot of guilt. And so she's like, well, I want to try like a Protestant church. So we went to a church, kind of freaked my mom out. We didn't go for a year. Then we moved to a different place, and they found a church in the middle of a cornfield, which to me was freakier as a third grader than to them. Go to this church, a small church, and my mom used the gospel for the first time, and broke down crying and accepted Christ that moment. Just she never had heard something like that before, and all the guilt she had built up for years gone. And then a couple years later, I ended up accepting, and we ended up attending that church for about 7 years until we moved to California, and that drastically changed my life and who I was going to be. In middle school, I'd already planned out my full life, who I was going to marry, where I was going to go to university, and how I was going to raise my kids. Yes, I was a weird child. I want things planned out, and this is how I wanted them. So I find out we're moving one day. We're in a car. We're driving home from my grandparents. I'm in 8th grade, and they're like, "Hey, we're moving." Oh, okay. We had moved a million times before when I was a child, and this is the longest we'd ever been in a house. And we're moving to California. And I remember being like, just dead silent. And my brother is playing like on his Game Boy, so he's like not really paying attention. And then I start crying. And he looks at me. He's like, "Why are you crying?" And I'm like, "Well, we're going to California." It's like, "What?" And then he asked my parents, and he started crying, and the whole car was a mess. And my little sister, who was about 2 or 3 at this point, was like, she was really chipper, and she was like, "Oh, it's okay, like, we'll make new friends." I'm like, you're 3 or 4, you don't know anything. I don't know. She didn't say it like that, just not as eloquently, but that's what she said. And I just remember I would pray that whole year. I'd be on my knees begging, like, please change something. I can't go out there. I have my best friends here, everything. I cannot move out to California. And I was angry with my parents and all this sort of stuff. And we ended up moving out here, and it ended up. I ended up getting depressed my first year out here. I would wake up anxious every single day. California is a foreign land to the rest of the world. You guys dress different, you eat different, you talk different. I was bullied a lot because I had a really strong, thick Boston accent. It comes out when I talk with people on the East Coast. My wife noticed it when we go and visit. It comes back when in California. I kind of hid it because oh, why do you say that? I thought it was so weird when kids would say hecka. They're like, "Oh, that's hecka cool." I'm like, "What? That's not even a word." But then I would say, that's that's wicked cool, or that's wicked. The wicked's like a New England thing. So I would say, to me, it made more sense because that was a word. But that didn't fly with the kids. So I went through this time, and I was going through a lot of issues with my biological father at this point, and I went to visit him this summer between my sophomore and junior year, and I went out to Montauk, New York, which is like this little beach surf town, and I stayed with him for a while. And I remember, and I had just kind of gotten over this serious depression, anxiety my freshman year. Like I said, I'd wake up every morning very anxious. I would sometimes be ill. My parents didn't quite understand. They thought I was being over dramatic and be like, "You're fine. Stop being like that." The hard East Coast parents, but they're super loving and wonderful. But they thought I was maybe being over dramatic, which I may have been. But it was really hard. And one day I remember kind of confronting my parents or my dad and being like, "Look, this is kind of all the things I'm going through." And it was really helpful because he had moved a lot as a child. My dad's Canadian, forgive him for that. And he moved around a lot. My parents would, my grandparents moved around a lot. They moved to, Dubai when he was a child, Holland, a couple other places. He moved around a lot as a kid. So he kind of was used to not having close friends for a long period of time, living in foreign countries, all this types of stuff. So he really connected with me, and we had this amazing moment as a father and son, and it really put me past everything I was going through. Because I was bullied for the first time, but in a way where I couldn't really fight back because they'd be like, "Well, you're just weird." I'd be like, "Well, but everyone agreed. It wasn't just me. I mean, I had friends and everything, but it just was so hard for me to be it was on a foreign land. People out here wore skinny jeans, and I wore really baggy jeans. I like the Red Sox, people like the Giants, which still I don't know why. people hated the Patriots, didn't understand that either. I ate different food, just in general, like, I was always a bigger kid, and all my friends were really skinny, so I was convinced I was the fat one out here. Whereas the East Coast, I'm the skinny one, and all my other friends are bigger than I am. So that was really hard for me to handle. Music taste, everything, and so that moment with my father really drove me past that and really helped me kind of assimilate better to California, feel better about living here and moving here, and not feel like I'm abandoning my upbringing on the East Coast. So sorry, to go back to then, I spent time with my biological father, and I'm out there, and one day we're spending time together, and it was a pretty good visit, better than normal, longer than normal, and he says to me, he's like, hey, have a beer with me. And I'm 16, and I'm like, no, like my parents said no. And he's like, well, no, it's okay, like just try it with me. I said, well, no, I can't, my parents said no. He goes, well, I'm your parent. And I'm thinking at that moment, like, no, like you've done nothing for me to say that, and my parents are telling me I can't. And I remember, and at that point I was like, well, like please, like no. And they started to get upset with me. So then for the first time, and I told this to my youth kids, I yelled at a parent. I said, listen, I'm 16 years old. I'm not going to drink a beer with you. I'm sorry. I remember I left. I like walked out of the beach house. And I remember being like kind of shaken and thinking like, why do I have to tell my own father that I don't want to drink this beer? Like, why? Like, this is so bizarre. Like, he should catch me in the basement drinking a beer, not telling me to drink one. And I remember, and then it kind of brought me back to this moment where I was a kid, where I remember walking down my street. I lived in a really rural area in northern Massachusetts, and I was kind of dealing with sort of, having two siblings who are only half siblings, and being reminded of that when I would spend time with like my biological grandmother or father. And I remember just thinking and being told in church, if you pray, amazing things can happen. So I would pray for hours about, just change time and make it so that my stepfather is my real dad and I don't know these other people. And I'll give up everything else, like just please, please, please. And I would pray and I would cry. I remember I'd be walking down the street, which probably looked bizarre. This like third grader crying, like holding his hands, looking up and down the street. And it brought me back to that, and I remember being just hitting me almost like, wow, I kind of have father issues. I'm in high school. I kind of have like this issue, and that always was something that I struggled with a lot within my faith, was how to look at as Christ as being, God as being my father, and how like he loves me, not really quite understanding even an earthly love, even though I had this phenomenal stepfather, but how my biological father just seemed to really always be combative. We always butted heads over things that I thought were just abnormal for fathers to handle. And then during this time, I'm just being completely vulnerable with you guys, kind of telling you my story just so you can kind of better know me. So I apologize if it's like really down or like depressing. I promise I'm a happy kid. I had a good life. I want to be vulnerable in this moment. So at this time as well, the church I grew up in was very conservative. It was dancing was a sin, and dancing. And like the joke was like sex leads to dancing, kind of thing. They were very. They had a certain way of life, and I don't want to hate upon it, but it really affected how I viewed the world when I came out to California. Things changed with the church we joined, and therefore the granddaughter of the pastor, who is she's an older lady, decided that I had become a demon child, and because of the music I listened to and the lyrics I would post on Facebook, which were Christian bands at the time. And she then told all of my friends and the mothers that I was a bad kid now, and that I disobeyed my parents, and that they should excommunicate me. And these were my best friends, these kids who I grew up with, and I get it from an email from her son. I put up a status, something like on Facebook, something about trying to be a better Christian, who knows? And he emails me and he goes, hey, you know what? My mom doesn't think you are, and you need to be aware of that. I remember being like, what? What did I ever do to you or your mom? And I found out my best friend calls me, and he's like, hey, they're telling all of us to like stop talking to you, like not be friends with you anymore. And I'm in California, and I'm thinking like, what have I done? I just felt so guilty, and I was like begging my parents, I'm like, what did I do? And they're confused, and they don't understand what's going on. And I just remember being so hurt because like this was, to me, was like this wonderful family that I had that now was turning their back on me because I'd done something that wasn't even fully comprehended that I'd done wrong. And so at all this time in high school, I just was angry. I was very, very angry. I was angry at my old church. I was angry at my father. I was angry that I had to move to California. I hated California. I hated everything about it. And in high school's hard, all I wanted was a girlfriend, and I never had got a girlfriend, and all I wanted was to be like the star of this or the star of that. I never had that, and it was very. It was a trying time, as high school always is, and so, and then I started to take my faith more personally. I started attending a new church, and I realized that for a long time I'd kind of kept my faith at a very certain extent, very minimal, very shallow, and I kind of let my parents do sort of all the leading. Like if they didn't ask me to do my own devotions or do my own prayer or whatever, I just didn't do it. So I just started to really take a hold of that while in high school, and it really drastically changed how I viewed my relationship with Christ, my relationship with my parents, and even like what I had in my life. And then it was at this time that I started college. And at this time, the church that we attended as well had decided to call my father that he was doing heretical things because he had turned down the deacon job. They had asked him to be an elder. They asked him to be an elder, and he had said he had felt like God was calling him to not be an elder at that time because he still had 2 younger kids and myself, and wanted to make sure that he was still a good father and he was still traveling west. He said, I really can't be an elder right now. And the pastor ended up very much disagreeing with that and saying that my family was basically anti-Christ, anti-biblical, and kind of got us out of the church. And that was, again, very rough in college. Man, I'm a downer. I'm sorry, guys. That's not what I'm trying to do. It all comes together, I promise. So then I meet this girl in college, in community college, Emily, my wife, not at the time, and it was so amazing because she's the first person or girl that I met, kind of growing up where, and she knows this, so don't take offense to it. I thought she was pretty, but I was more attracted to her about the joy and this passion she had for the people. She was so loving and so giving and very, very non-judgmental because me and my friends were crazy, and she just was, always wanted to hang out with us, and, come to my house, come to Bible study after, and I'm like, okay, we were these, we weren't the greatest kids, and, in church terms, and so, but it was amazing. I was like, wow, this girl's really, really great, and I was like, guys, I think I want to, try to date her. They're like, oh, yeah, but I was like, I'm not good enough, though, so instead I'm going to try to date her best friend. So she knows all this, obviously, so I just don't worry. She knows I'm talking about this, and that does not last at all. We were just purely friends, and the friend one day is like, why don't you really like Emily, you should. And I was like, no, she's too good for me. She's this, very innocent girl, never dated anyone. I don't think it ever cursed at that moment in her life. Just very, very good girl, and I was this, to me, I was this bad kid, and so, anyway, I was okay, well, I'll try, and we started talking, and, then, one day I asked her out, and she gave me a high five. And that was it, and we started dating, and, that really threw me off with a high five, not even a hug, but just good job. She's like, good job, buddy. And I was like, whoa, this is weird. So we started dating, and at this point, with her, I think God really, she's a wonderful, patient woman, but God really used her to help me to verbally process and be open about the scars that I was dealing with within the church, my father, and moving, because I had amazing friends who were, there for me, would, make sure that, we really did stay out of trouble a lot of the time, and we, would always push each other to make sure that we were being better than we could be, and our faith and everything, and, but it's very different to be open with a bunch of guys and then with a girl who they can really hit a different sensitive spot. That's what I dealt with, and so for me, it was really amazing to kind of be open and honest with this girl who just wanted to love me and make sure that I was getting through what I had to get through, and, I felt very selfish at the time, but she was very, very selfless. And so at this time, I was able to really kind of come to terms with, okay, this is my life, and I need to not be so, I guess, angry, because there's a reason for it. People have gone through a lot worse things than I have. Was kind of what I kind of came to terms with. And using what I've gone through to further who I was as a person was that Christ can do amazing things through terrible circumstances, people who have done terrible things, people who have gone through things that you can't imagine, or lived a life that they had no control over, whatever the case may be. Maybe born a certain way, and Christ has used them in amazing, miraculous things that have touched people, and things that just unexplainable only through the love and compassion of the gospel. And that's when it really hit me. Okay, I really want to go to a Christian university, because I was at community college at the time, and I got into San Jose State, but I was like, I really want to go somewhere different. And that's when I ended up going to William Jessup. I really loved the small campus vibe, and so we started going there. And I just had a breakthrough one day with Jeremiah 29:11. I'm in class, and I was in a theology class, and this was brought up, and I'd heard it before, but it sort of just kind of one in ear out the other. And then I'm reading it, and Emily and I just had a really good conversation earlier about how kind of I was still dealing with some of the stuff from my dad. I just got off the phone with him, my biological father, and it hit me, and I was like, wow, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope in the future. And it floored me that I never blamed God for the things I went through. To me, that was just life. That's what we have to go through some very hard and serious ups and downs, and because of this fallen, sinful world that we live in. But it was amazing that regardless, there were still going to be some mind-blowing things that were going to help other people, and things that I may not even understand. I'm so sorry. Understand or realize or even see the fruit of me being of the things that I've gone through, how I've touched other people. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. And it was really humbling to realize that this God of the universe would use these things, like me, my life, my minuscule, very little life, and the things that I went through to help or to inspire other people through various things. And then all of a sudden, different things started to change within my life. I got this internship at this church in San Jose during the summer, and I'm helping out, and this girl comes up to me one day after I kind of shared my testimony about 2 weeks later, and she's like, I don't know if you know this, but I have some suicidal problems, and I've tried to commit suicide a couple times, but your story, I was going to do something last night, but I remembered it, and I stopped, and you really changed that. And I was floored. I was like, wow. And I was like, no, God definitely used me. But she's like, no, I want you to know, you being honest and vulnerable very much stopped me from doing what I was going to do, which could have been irreplaceable. And to me, that was just a very small, it was like the one moment where I'd seen, oh wow, my story's actually done something for someone. And God has used that and used through me to help this girl who I didn't know and haven't talked to since. But I just felt very blessed in that moment. And then through that, I kind of realized I kind of had a heart for the youth, and found Dave, and been able to love on their kids, and they're all very wonderful, and I love their quirks, especially their drive to win. It was very terrifying the first time I had them. I thought they were going to kill each other with the competitiveness, but now I know. I'm prepared. Yes, I just ended. I'm sorry if this was kind of wacky and kind of didn't really. I hope it kind of made sense and kind of came to a point to you guys. I apologize. I'm a little bit kind of sick. I'm still getting over some stuff with that. So I hope it made sense. Thank you for letting me talk to you guys and kind of barge in on your Sunday from Dave's normal preaching. He does an amazing job. And I will close and have the worship team come up. Okay, perfect. So I'll pray real quick. I'll come up. Father, thank you again for this day that we can spend with you and with each other. Thank you for these people as they open up their ears to what I have to say, and I pray that with this last song that we're able to just worship you and start the rest of this day just with a heart ready to see the blessings that you have for us. And in Jesus' name.